On July 1, 1916, the British lost 57,000 men in a single day. It was the bloodiest day in British military history. But how did an attack that had been planned for a month turn into a massacre in a matter of hours? Section 1. The week before 0 hour. June 29, 1916. The Somme front, northern France. The air smells like scorched earth and hot metal. Every few seconds the ground shudders, not with thunder from a summer sky, but with the dull, endless concussion of British guns. If you stand on the chalk lip above Albert, you can feel the vibrations climb your legs and rattle your teeth. The bombardment has been going on for 5 days already, and it will not stop until the moment the whistles blow. Namek UK+2. Imperial War Museums, PUM2, in a forward observation post. Captain Edward Hardwick of the Royal Artillery presses his field glasses to his eyes. He's 28, a pre-war school teacher with who knows what kind of luck that landed him here, turning grids on a map into targets. His job is to watch the German lines and adjust fire. His ears are ringed with a permanent hiss now. He can no longer tell which explosions are his own and which are German shells returning the favor. Below his perch, the British trench system is alive with movement. Runners splash through narrow duckboard lanes. Stretcher bearers practice lifting men in silence. Engineers check coils of wire and stacks of sandbags. Infantry carry their rifles wrapped in cloth to keep out chalk dust. This is Rawlinson's 4th Army. 11 divisions stretched along a 15-mile front from Serre in the north, down past Beaumont-Hamel, Thiepval, Hauvillers, La Boisselle, Fricourt, and toward Montauban and Maricourt. Encyclopedia Britannica, Mod 1. Most of them are volunteers, Kitchener's new army, men who were wearing factory aprons or bank sleeves 2 years ago. Now they learn war by living in mud. No, Namek UK. The plan that hangs over everything is simple, almost comforting in its simplicity. A week-long bombardment, beginning June 24th, has one big purpose: pulverize the German front line, smash their strong points, and most of all, cut the barbed wire that guards the trenches like iron hedges. Over 1.5 million shells are being fired. Some officers say it's closer to 1.7 million. Either way, it's the largest artillery preparation Britain has ever attempted. Namek UK+2. Imperial War Museums, +2. In brigadier tents and dugout messes, there is a kind of grim faith in the guns. The wire will be shredded. The trenches will be flattened. German defenders, if they are alive at all, will be too stunned to resist. The infantry will advance behind a creeping barrage and simply step into what's left. Namek UK+1. But the Germans on the Somme are not living in shallow, scraped trenches. They've had nearly 2 years to prepare. Their engineers have dug deep, timbered shelters, dugouts sometimes 30 feet underground, fitted with bunks, generators, even electric light in some sectors. When the bombardment begins, German troops walk down staircases into the chalk belly of the earth and wait. Warmuseum.ca/2. At night, while British guns glow along the horizon like a chain of red furnaces, German officers crouch around maps. They listen to the shelling and take notes. They know the British are trying to cut the wire. They know a big push is coming. But they also know something else. Much of the British ammunition is unreliable. Shells burst late or not at all. Whole barrages thud into the soil as duds. Others have fuses too insensitive to detonate on wire, so they bury themselves uselessly in chalk. War Museums Haplaver 1. Captain Hardwick doesn't know any of that exactly. He does know what he can see, and what he can see bothers him. Around midday, he studies the sector opposite the 31st Division near Serre. At this distance, the German line looks like a scar across the green-brown slope. Smoke rises from shattered trees. Some sections of trench have been turned into craters. But even through the haze, there are dark lines in front of the German parapet. Wire, still standing in long, tangled belts. Hardwick lowers his glasses and frowns. A major beside him, older, mustached, tries to sound casual. "From what I hear, Captain, the wire will be in ribbons by Saturday." That's what the staff says. Hardwick doesn't answer. He lifts the glasses again. Somewhere along the line, a shell slams down, flinging dust that hangs like fog. The major is right about one thing. The bombardment is doing damage. German trenches are being churned. Strong points are smashed in places. But the wire in this sector seems stubbornly alive. In other observation posts up and down the front, other men notice the same thing. Patrols go out at night, crawling into no man's land. They return whispering that wire is still thick. They say it's in multiple belts. They say it's higher than a man in places. Some officers send urgent notes to Corps headquarters. The replies that come back are polite, vague, and final. The bombardment will do its work. Keep the men steady. 0 hour is set. June 30th arrives with a haze of summer heat trapped over the trenches. The guns roar without pause. Overhead, British aircraft spot for the artillery, engines droning like insects. The infantry clean their rifles one more time. Many of them write labels with their names and units and pin them inside their tunics, because the brass has told them identification will matter later. Some of the men joke as they do it. Some do not. Late in the evening, Lieutenant William Hayes of the 8th Battalion, the East Surrey Regiment, walks his line. He stops by each platoon, crouching in the firing step so his face is level with theirs. "Tomorrow," he says, trying to sound like the men he admired in training lectures, "you'll go forward after the barrage. The Boche wire will be gone. Keep your intervals. Don't bunch up. We'll be in their trench in minutes." He doesn't fully believe the wire will be gone. But belief is a luxury now. The plan is the plan. Somewhere in the darkness, across no man's land, German soldiers sit underground in dugouts that have held firm against the storm. They sip coffee brewed on little stoves. They check their machine guns by lantern light. They know the bombardment will stop soon. And when it stops, they will climb back up. At 3 a.m., the British front wakes to final preparations. The bombardment intensifies. The earth trembles so hard that water ripples in shell holes. Men tighten their packs and fix bayonets. Many have never seen combat. In a few hours, they will walk into it for the first time, and above them, in 1,000 positions along the line, officers watch the German wire through periscopes and binoculars, waiting for proof, any proof, that the guns have done what they promised. The proof does not come. Section 2. 0 hour and the wire that wouldn't die. July 1st, 1916. 7:20 a.m. The British front line on the Somme. The guns change their tone. For days the bombardment has been a continuous iron roar, a storm with no rhythm. Now it becomes sharper, more deliberate. A last, brutal tightening of the fist. Along the whole arc of the front, batteries fire in synchronized patterns, lifting their aim from the German first line to the supports behind it. The creeping barrage is about to begin. In the East Surrey trenches near La Boisselle, Lieutenant Hayes checks his wristwatch again and again. His men stand packed on the fire step, bayonets fixed, packs bulging with 60 pounds of gear, rations, bombs, wire cutters, picks, spare ammunition, sometimes a shovel longer than a rifle. They look like men about to hike, not men about to die. The trench is so crowded that shoulders touch shoulders, and the overhanging clay walls press in like the sides of a coffin. Behind them, A whistle hangs from Hayes's neck. The sound it will make in a few minutes is supposed to open the gate to history. He climbs a broken ladder to the parapet and peers through a periscope. The German line is half hidden by smoke, but in front of it he can still see shapes. Not shadows, not imagination. Shapes, wire. It stands in stuttering black ridges, some of it flattened, some of it blasted into crazy loops, but not cut through, not cleared into lanes, not enough. Hayes slides back down into the trench. "Sir?" a sergeant asks, trying to keep his voice steady. Hayes hesitates. The kind of hesitation that lasts half a second but stays with a man forever. "We go on time," he says. "The barrage will do the rest." At 7:28, the final salvo crashes. At 7:30, the whistles blow as one long rising shriek all along the Somme front. It's a cold sound in a warm morning. Men climb ladders, boots thudding on wood rungs, hands grabbing the parapet. The first wave goes over. From above, the battlefield looks wide and almost peaceful at first. The wheat fields shimmer in early sunlight. Larks still sing somewhere high above the artillery smoke. Then the first wave of dark figures spills forward, and the Somme turns into a moving line of men. They advance as ordered, in ranks, at a measured pace. Because their officers believe speed will only confuse the formation. The barrage is supposed to keep the Germans pinned. The wire is supposed to be gone. In the north, near Serre and Beaumont-Hamel, battalions of the 31st and 29th Divisions step out into no man's land, like actors entering a stage. Some men carry footballs, kicked forward in nervous ritual. Others smile because smiling feels like courage. In the German dugouts, the earth stops shaking. The bombardment, their private hell for a week, has lifted. A Feldwebel in Reserve Infantry Regiment 110, one of the units defending near Auvillers and La Boisselle, looks at his watch, the same way Hayes does. He hears the guns shifting back. He knows what that means. He shouts down the dugout stairwell, "Raus jetzt." Boots scramble up wooden steps. Helmets appear. Men rush to firing positions that they had memorized in the dark. Machine guns are hauled up and angled toward the open slope. The Germans aren't dazed. They aren't buried. They are alive, and they are ready. The first British lines reach the wire, and then everything slows into horror. The wire isn't one fence. It's belts, sometimes 30 yards deep, stacked in overlapping coils and pickets. In places, the barrage has snapped strands and flung them into snarls, making them worse than before. There are no clean gaps, no safe lanes. Men bunch the way men always bunch when they meet an unexpected wall. They push and climb and hack at it with cutters that are too small for the job. They try to lift it with rifle stocks. They crawl into it and get tangled. Lieutenant Hayes sees it happen in front of his company. A private reaches the wire, raises his cutters, and realizes the strands are thicker than he expected. He yanks once. Nothing gives. He yanks again. The cutter jaws slip. The private looks back, mouth moving like he's trying to ask a question through the noise. Then a German machine gun starts. The sound is not a loud bang, but a ripping, metallic buzz, like canvas tearing at high speed. Men fall in strings. Some drop cleanly. Some spin and fold. Others collapse into the wire, hanging there in unnatural poses, their weight pulling coils down like wet laundry. If you are in the second wave, you see the first wave halting at the wire. You see bodies stacking. You don't yet understand why, so you keep moving forward. Because forward is the only motion in the order of the world right now. Then you reach them and understand. Around La Boisselle, German MG-08 crews fire from positions that the bombardment never touched. Their barrels glow dull red. Ammunition belts feed like snakes. Behind them, riflemen fire into the knots at the wire. Every time a British group forms to cut or climb through, it draws fire like a magnet. Hayes is up and over now, moving with his men because staying in the trench feels like betrayal. He is shouting, though he doesn't remember what. He reaches the wire and tries to force a gap with his own hands. The strands bite his palms through his gloves. The wire is slick with dust and blood. It refuses to move. He turns to his sergeant. Bombs, get bombs up. A runner tries to bring forward a box of Mills bombs. He makes it 5 steps before the burst of a machine gun cuts him down. The box tumbles and spills grenades into the grass. No one can reach them. Along the front, the same scene repeats with slight variations in misery. At Thiepval, the 32nd and 36th Divisions are pinned in front of broad wire belts that survived the shelling. Near Gommecourt, men of the 56th London Division fight their way into German trenches in one sector, while adjacent waves are stranded at wire and shot apart. At Beaumont-Hamel, the 29th Division's battalions melt away in front of wire that stands almost untouched. The Newfoundland Regiment, sent forward later through a communication trench already clogged with casualties, emerges into the same trap and is shredded in minutes. The officers who had watched the wire through periscopes all week now see their fears made physical. Some try to signal back to artillery to cut fresh lanes. But telephones are dead, lines severed by shell fire. Runners sent with messages rarely return. In one sector, an artillery captain screams at a signaller to raise the barrage again. The signaller shakes his head, face white. No contact, sir, no contact. So the guns keep firing their schedule, creeping forward regardless, while men below them stay trapped against wire that will not break. By 8 a.m., the first day of the Somme is already turning into something the planners never imagined, and the British officers, standing in shell holes, pressed into crushed grass, staring at the black knots ahead, begin to realize, with a sinking clarity, that the week-long bombardment did not open the door. It left it locked. Section 3. The collapse of the plan. By 8:15 a.m., the morning sun is higher, and the battlefield has a cruel clarity. The smoke is thinning in patches. No man's land is no longer an empty space on a map. It's a crowded, broken avenue of bodies, gear, and men still trying to move. Lieutenant Hayes has stopped thinking in sentences. His world has shrunk to a few yards of wire and the sound of bullets slashing through grass. The wire belt in front of him is a tangle of thick German pickets and overlapping coils. It rises to chest height, bows inward in places from shell hits, but never opens. Men crouch against it, panting, fingers bleeding from cutters. A corporal to Hayes's left points at a shallow crater that seems to offer cover. "Sir, if we can get there." The corporal never finishes. A burst from an MG-08 sweeps the crater's lip. The corporal drops backward, eyes wide, as if surprised a sound could do that to a body. Behind Hayes, the second and third waves are still coming. Training and orders haul them forward, even when common sense screams to get down. They reach the first wave and stall. They press against the same wire. The line swells into a dense knot of men. Dense knots draw machine gun fire. Farther up the slope, a British barrage is crawling on, obedient to its timetable, lifting 100 yards every few minutes. It is now falling on German support trenches that will not matter for hours, while the enemy's frontline machine guns are doing the real work. Somewhere in a shattered sap trench, a captain from brigade headquarters is trying to make a decision with no information. Field telephones are silent. His runner is dead. Every minute he waits means more men pinned at wire, more men dying, and the plan, the neat paper plan, dissolving. He waves his arm toward an exposed line of chalk and smoke. "Signal flares. Red. Tell them to halt the next waves." A signaller fumbles for a flare pistol, hands shaking so hard the cartridges rattle. He fires. A red flare rises weakly, a small ruby spark in a sky full of gray haze. To any artillery observer who sees it, it is one dot among thousands. The next waves keep coming. North of the river, the pattern is the same, but the scale is larger. At Serre, battalions of the 31st Division are being cut down by German fire as soon as they clear their parapets. Whole platoons vanish. Officers who survive long enough to look up see wires stretching ahead nearly untouched, dark, comb-like belts that the bombardment only combed, never severed. At Beaumont-Hamel, remnants of the 29th Division are flattened in the open. The Hawthorne Ridge crater looms like a fresh wound, but the German parapets on either side are alive with riflemen. The wire there has become a trap in 3 dimensions. Men fall into it, pile into it, and are shot in it. At Thiepval, the Schwaben redoubt is still firing. German defenders step out from dugouts into firing bays that survive the shelling almost perfectly. Their field of fire sweeps the slopes where the 32nd Division and the Ulster Division are trying to advance. The Ulstermen do what they can. They rush, they cut, they climb. But the wire costs time, and time costs blood. The men are not cowards. They are not failing the plan. The plan is failing them. In the British trenches behind the line, battalion aid posts begin to overflow. Stretcher bearers stagger down communication trenches with loads that feel heavier than any drill. The wounded bleed through their tunics, leaving dark stains on duckboards. Some whisper for water. Some do not make noise at all. One medical officer, already soaked to the elbows, looks at his orderly. "Where's the breakthrough? They said it would be easy." The orderly just stares. He has no answer. Around 9 a.m., a surviving runner reaches a divisional command post dug into the chalk. He is half blind from dust, his uniform torn, his voice raw. "The wire is not cut," he gasps. "They can't get through. The men are pinned." The staff officers listening are men who have lived inside maps, planners who have watched the week-long bombardment from rear hills. For a moment, nobody speaks, as if silence might undo the message. Then, an older colonel, face drawn tight, says what everyone is thinking. "But the bombardment. 7 days. How can the wire still be there?" The runner looks at him as if the question belongs to another world. "It is there, sir, in belts. They're stuck on it." In some sectors, junior officers take the only initiative left. They try to redirect survivors into shell holes, scrape shallow cover, and wait for a renewed barrage that may never come. Others attempt small flanking moves, crawling along the wire to find a gap. Many gaps lead straight into another belt. German wire is layered like a fortress, designed for exactly this moment. At La Boisselle, Hayes pulls 3 men into a crater no deeper than a bathtub. The earth in it is hot from shell bursts. They press their backs against the far lip. "Listen," he says, voice hoarse. "We're not moving through that. Not like this." A private beside him is staring at his hands, which are coated in blood that isn't all his. "But the order, sir." Hayes looks across no man's land. He sees more men clinging to wire, some waving for cover, some still trying to cut. He sees machine gun bursts stitching the grass in calm, methodical lines. He sees the barrage far ahead, useless now, falling on empty trenches. "The order was built on wire being gone," he says. And it isn't. To say it out loud feels like treason. To not say it feels like murder. By late morning, British Corps commanders begin sending piecemeal orders to stop attacks in shattered sectors, while trying to exploit the rare successes in the south. But on the northern half of the front, the day has already set itself like concrete. The wire held. The Germans emerged from deep dugouts, and the British assault meant to be a measured walk into a broken enemy line, has turned into men dying in front of fences they were promised did not exist. Section 4. The day becomes a trap. Late morning, July 1st, 1916. Heat starts to collect in the low ground. The Somme Valley isn't a grand river here, just a slow, stubborn ribbon cutting through chalk and farmland. But the air above it turns thick under sun and powder smoke. Flies gather where they can. The smell of cordite, torn soil, and blood becomes a single thing. Lieutenant Hayes has lost track of time. His watch was smashed when a fragment cut his wrist, and the sticky heat on his skin makes every minute feel like an hour. In the crater with him, the three men breathe shallowly, like animals in a snare. The lip of the crater is no longer cover, not really. German rifles have the range now. Machine guns keep sweeping. The bullets are less frantic than earlier. They are professional, paced. The Germans have settled into their work. Around them, the field is scattered with figures who can't move. Some are dead. Others are profoundly alive and trying not to be noticed. Every few yards, a man is caught in wire, arms hooked, legs snarled, head tilted as if listening. A few are still hacking at the coils. The sight is unbearable because it is noble and pointless at the same time. A sergeant from another company crawls to Hayes, face gray with dust. "Sir, brigade says keep pressing. There's supposed to be a gap by the sunken road." Hayes blinks. The sunken road is 100 yards forward, and every yard is a throat of fire. Who says? Message came down. They're sending another wave. Hayes wants to laugh, not because it's funny, but because the idea of another wave feels like a man trying to pour water into a glass already shattered on the floor. He looks over the lip and sees it happening anyway. Back in the British front line, whistles are blowing again. Men who have been crouched for hours in trench corners climb ladders with the clumsy obedience of exhaustion. Some have watched earlier waves collapse, some haven't. Either way, the order is the same: forward. They go. The Germans see them instantly. The slope is open, the light is bright, and the British are rising in lines. The first machine guns open up again. Their barrels have cooled for a while. Now they sing once more, and the fresh wave falls into the same geometry of death. A young officer, second lieutenant, perhaps 19, runs with his men for 20 yards before he is clipped in the throat. He drops his whistle. Men behind him trip over his body. They slow. The wire looms. The field becomes a knot again. Hayes watches, helpless. The failure of the wire cutting is no longer a tactical detail. It's the hinge on which the whole day swings. The wire is forcing a certain shape into the battle. It compresses attackers into targets. It steals momentum. It turns courage into stillness. Across the German line, in a firing bay, sheltered by timbers that survived the bombardment, a machine gun officer, Lieutenant Karl Weiss, Reserve Regiment 110, checks his section's ammunition. His face is smeared with chalk dust that leaked into the dugout during shelling. His hands are steady. "Left traverse," he says. "They're thickening there." His gunner adjusts the tripod by inches. The next burst rips into another mass at the wire. Weiss does not hate the men he is killing. He barely sees men as individuals right now. He sees a battlefield problem that is being presented to him in the simplest possible way. Targets collecting where wire is intact. An older NCO behind him mutters something like prayer, not for mercy, but for endurance. The bombardment was terrible. The relief now, to be in control again, is almost physical. Around noon, the British artillery finally tries to respond to reality. Observers who can still see the front line begin calling for short, frantic concentrations on wire belts. Battery commanders, years trained to obey in schedules, now attempt something closer to improvisation. But the guns are blind. Smoke and dust drift like thick curtains. Communication lines are shattered. Some batteries are still firing on previous orders, others have no orders at all. A few shoot at anything that looks like a target. Shells fall among the wire belts, but they also fall among men pinned in front of them. The Somme is now a battlefield where help and harm are indistinguishable at distance. Near Auvillers, a shell lands short and blows apart a group of British soldiers sheltering in a depression. The men around them don't even turn. They are too busy with the bullets coming from the front. Farther south, the soundscape is different. There are sectors where British troops have taken Montauban and parts of Mametz, where the wire was actually cut and German trenches really were smashed. There, the battle still feels like movement and possibility. But north of the river, where Hayes is, the day is fixed. It is a siege in the open, a slaughter against metal. A runner arrives from behind, crawling on knees and elbows, and drops beside Hayes like a stone. "Sir," he pants, "they're calling it off. Not everywhere, but they're stopping the pushes here. Hold where you are." Hayes tries to process the words. "Hold where we are," he repeats. Where they are is a crater in no man's land, in front of uncut wire, under direct observation. Holding here is not defense. It's waiting to be killed slowly. He looks around for alternatives. There is no trench to retreat to without crossing open ground. The wire still blocks any advance. The crater is the only shelter they have. So they hold. Time passes in agonizing scraps. A minute of quiet, then a storm of fire. A man shifting his weight, then a bullet cracking in chalk. A cry for stretcher bearers from a place no stretcher can reach. In the afternoon, the Germans begin counterattacking in small, methodical ways. They don't charge the open slopes. They don't need to. They crawl out to repair wire, to retrieve wounded, to strengthen firing positions. They know the British are pinned and fading. In sectors where British units did reach trenches but were isolated, German bombing parties move in to clear them. The battle is being decided not by dramatic charges now, but by who can move under the wire's shadow and who can't. Hayes watches a German patrol emerge cautiously near the wire, dragging the coils tighter into place. The men are close enough that he can see their spade tools and the glint of their helmets. A private beside Hayes whispers, almost childlike, "They're fixing it." "Yes," Hayes says, "they are." The statement carries a brutal truth. The wire will be even worse if the British ever try again. As the day leans toward evening, the field in front of the German line becomes a frozen tide. Bodies lie draped on black coils. Equipment is scattered like shed skin. Survivors are sunk into shell holes, trapped between orders that no longer fit the battlefield, and a barrier they can't break. And all along the Somme, British officers who had trusted the 7-day barrage now stare at the wire with a stunned, hollow understanding. The guns promised a doorway. Instead, they left a wall. Section 5. Evening, Reckoning, and the Wire's Legacy. July 1st, 1918, after 6 p.m. The light goes soft over the Somme, turning the chalk dust into a pale haze that glows gold for a moment. The kind of evening that would feel gentle in any other world. Here, it feels obscene. The guns never fully stop, but their rhythm changes again, becoming scattered and tired, like a storm running out of breath. In no man's land, men who have been pinned for hours begin to take stock of the only truth left. Survive until dark. Lieutenant Hayes raises his head above the crater lip for half a second and sees the battlefield in a way he has avoided seeing it all day. The wire belts ahead are no longer just obstacles. They are hung with the dead. Some bodies are twisted where they fell. Others are folded over coils, head down, arms slack. A few are still upright, trapped by their webbing or pack straps, as if standing to attention in a nightmare parade. He drops back, shaking, not from fear now, but from something thinner and colder. The slow realization that courage can be wasted by a bad assumption. Behind him, the British line is a broken thing. Communication trenches are clogged with wounded and exhausted men moving both ways, like blood trying to return to a heart that's failing. Battalion headquarters dugouts are full of officers with soot-black faces and eyes that look older than the war itself. Paper maps lie on tables, but no one trusts them anymore. At Divisional HQ, staff officers are trying to build a picture out of fragments. Some lines have succeeded in the south. Some battalions have vanished in the north. Units that were meant to be a mile forward are still in their own parapets or lying dead 20 yards from wire. A brigadier from the front arrives. Boots caked in chalk, collar torn. He doesn't bother with ceremony. "It's the wire," he says. "We weren't through. Not anywhere we failed. The wire stopped us cold." Someone at the table says the same question others said at dawn. How? How could it survive? The brigadier stares at them as if they're asking why rain is wet. Duds, wrong fuses, deep dugouts. The Boche built their belts thick and layered. We didn't cut it. No one contradicts him. There is nothing left to contradict. In the crater, Hayes listens to the battlefield settling into dusk. The firing slackens in little pockets. German rifles still crack at movement, but the machine guns are less constant. The Germans know what the British are trying to do now. They have watched this all day. They expect the surviving infantry to crawl back after dark. Hayes gathers his 3 men. "When the light goes," he whispers, "we move. Not running, crawling. Low." The private, who has been staring at his hands, nods without speaking. The sergeant, older, just exhales. "Heard you, sir." They wait. Somewhere farther north, other survivors are making the same preparation. Men are whispering to each other by name, checking who is still alive. Stretcher bearers attempt impossible rescues, crawling into wire belts with white armbands that mean nothing under fire. Now and then, a flare rises over the German line, throwing harsh white light onto the field. When that happens, every living thing freezes. A flare is more terrifying than a gun because it makes you visible to every gun. At 9 p.m., darkness begins to pool in the craters. Hayes and his men slide from their shelter like ghosts. Each movement is deliberate. A boot scraping chalk can be a death sentence. A cough can call down a bullet. They crawl on elbows and knees, following shallow depressions, using the dead as cover, because the dead are everywhere. They pass men who are too wounded to move. One reaches out and catches Hayes' sleeve. "Don't leave me," the man whispers. Hayes opens his mouth, but the words he wants don't exist in a battlefield like this. He squeezes the man's hand once, a promise without a plan, and keeps crawling. He hates himself for it. He keeps crawling anyway. Behind them, perhaps 50 yards from the wire, a wounded corporal suddenly cries out in delirium, trying to stand. German rifles crack in answer. The corporal drops, and the field goes quiet again. They reach a shell hole closer to the British parapet. From there, the last dash is a crawl into friendly wire and trench edges. Hands reach down to pull them in. The trench smells of sweat and clay and iodine. It feels like a different planet. Hayes rolls into the firing step and lies there, breathing with the kind of shock that comes after a great noise stops. A captain kneels beside him. "Where's your company?" Hayes looks up. His eyes are raw from dust and grief. "On the wire," he says. The captain goes still. Christ. Across the front, the same quiet catastrophe repeats. Companies that went over with 800 men return with 200. Some return with a dozen. Some do not return at all. In the north, entire battalions are gone. Not because they lacked bravery, but because they lacked a path through wire no one cut. By midnight, casualty lists begin to form. Numbers are scribbled down by lantern light. At corps level, they do not yet know the full scale, but they know enough to feel it in their throats. In a dressing station behind the line, a medical officer writes in his diary with hands that can barely hold the pencil. All day men came in with wire cuts, bullet wounds, shrapnel. Many never came in at all. He pauses, listening to distant guns. The wire was not destroyed. The barrages failed. On the German side, after dark, patrols go out too. They move among the wire belts, stepping carefully around corpses, finishing the wounded who cannot be captured, rescuing their own, tightening belts of wire that were warped by shelling. German officers note with grim satisfaction that their defenses, especially their wire and dugouts, have proven their worth. They also note something else, more quietly. The British will come again. A battle this large does not stop in one day. But when they come again, this time, they will remember the wire. Dawn on July the 2nd will reveal the field in full. No man's land carpeted with khaki. Wire loops black with bodies, shell holes filled with the wounded calling for water in voices already fading. For the British High Command, the realization lands like a second bombardment. Their faith in preparation, in artillery as a key that could unlock any trench, has been shattered on a thing as simple and brutal as barbed wire. They will spend the rest of the Somme learning how to cut it for real. With better fuses, shorter lifts, storm troops moving fast, engineers attached forward, creeping barrages timed not for theory, but for wire. But on July 1st, none of that exists yet. On July 1st, the wire stands in the sun and the smoke, and British officers look at it with stunned disbelief, because their week of thunder did not clear it. It only warned the enemy to be ready. Section 6. The second morning and the truth, spreading down the line. July 2nd, 1916. 4:30 a.m. The Somme wakes again under a low gray sky. Night has been hot and restless, not quiet, never quiet. But the first true light feels like a verdict. It exposes everything the dark had hidden, and what it exposes is worse than any rumor. Along the British front, men climb up to the parapet without orders, drawn by a need to know. They peer across no man's land and see the field of July 1st laid out like a photograph you can't tear up. The wire belts are still there. They are not just still there. They look stronger, darker, more solid than yesterday, because now they're outlined by bodies tangled in them. Packs hang from strands. Rifles are wedged in coils. A few men, impossibly alive, are still stuck. Their movements small, their voices thin. When a wounded man tries to pull himself free, German rifles crack him down. The wire does not just defend. It conducts death. Lieutenant Hayes, after an hour of sleep in a trench corner, climbs the fire step with his company commander. His hands are bandaged where the wire bit through his gloves. He is filthy in a way that feels permanent. The commander doesn't speak at first. He just stares. Hayes follows his gaze and sees the place where his company went down. He can recognize lads by their posture even at distance. One body is half over a coil, boots still on, head forward as if he's trying to finish the advance in some other world. Another is crouched low, arms around his chest. The wire has made a museum of their last choices. 7 days, the commander says finally, voice dry as chalk. 7 days of guns. Hayes doesn't answer. There's nothing to say that doesn't taste like ash. Behind them, new orders are already moving down the line. Rawlinson's army is to consolidate what it has taken in the south and renew pressure elsewhere. There will be more attacks, because this isn't a raid or a limited push. The Somme is the offensive meant to break the Western Front. One day of failure cannot stop it. But that doesn't mean the machine continues smoothly. It means it continues wounded. At Corps staff level, the reports from yesterday are arriving in full now. Battalion diaries, surviving runners, shell-shocked officers stumbling into command dugouts. All of them describe the same core fact. Intact wire. In sectors where attacks failed, wire is named again and again before machine guns even are. A staff captain lays the papers on the table for his general. His face is pale in the morning light. They say the wire was untouched in belts, sir. Cut in places, yes, but not enough. No lanes. The general runs a hand over his hair like he's trying to wake up from a nightmare. Are they certain? The captain nods. Multiple witnesses, patrols checked. It's consistent. The general closes his eyes. He isn't a fool. He was a professional soldier before this war turned into industry. He knows what this means. The artillery plan was built on assumptions about ammunition, fusing, and effect. The assumptions were wrong. He looks up. Then we adapt. We are not going to throw men at wire again unless it's open. He says it with resolve. But the sentence hangs in a room full of men who already know how hard that promise will be to keep. On the slopes opposite Thiepval and Auvillers, the Germans are awake too. Their trenches are battered, their ditches full of dust. But their front line still exists. Their wire still exists. German patrols have been out all night strengthening weak points, tightening gaps, restringing belts that had sagged. Their officers read captured paperwork and listened to prisoners. A German company commander writes in his notebook, the enemy artillery was monstrous, but their infantry advance was slow and grouped. Wire remained effective. Machine guns decisive. He is not celebrating in the way newspapers will later celebrate. He is noting a lesson the same way a carpenter notes a measurement, because he expects to need it again tomorrow. Around mid-morning, British artillery officers begin meeting in shattered farmhouses and chalk pits, talking over maps the way surgeons talk over wounds. The problem wasn't just duds. One major says, tracing a pencil along a wire belt on an aerial photo. It's fuse sensitivity. The number 106 is too scarce, and too much of this was high explosive burying under chalk. We need more instantaneous fuses in wire zones, and we need concentrated cuts. Another officer, younger, quietly furious, adds, and we need to stop thinking a timetable can win a battle if the ground doesn't match the timetable. Nobody argues. Yesterday's evidence is still hanging on the wire. The infantry feel these lessons in a different language. A surviving private from another battalion sits on a duckboard with a mug of tea shaking in his hands. He stares at the wire through a periscope that has been passed around his trench like a forbidden relic. They told us it'd be flat, he mutters to no one. Told us we'd stroll over. A corporal beside him answers without humor. Maybe it was flat somewhere else, not here. The private laughs once, ugly and short. Not here, no. In the afternoon, engineers begin moving forward under cover of fire to prepare actual lanes through wire for renewed attacks. They carry Bangalore torpedoes, long tubes of explosives designed to be pushed under wire and detonated, and heavier cutters. The work is slow, and every few minutes German snipers make it slower. But it happens. This is the new reality. Wire is not an afterthought. Wire is the battle. Hayes watches one engineering party creep out. He recognizes one of them, a man who shared a cigarette with his dead sergeant yesterday morning. The engineer crawls to the belt, slides a tube into the coils, then backs away inch by inch. Hayes waits for the blast. When it comes, it is strangely small compared to the week-long thunder that preceded July 1st. But small is better than useless. The wire jerks, rises, collapses into a torn gap. Hayes feels his chest tighten. "About time," he whispers. He doesn't mean it as relief. He means it as grief for the men who needed that gap yesterday. Behind him, the company commander turns. "Hayes." "Yes, sir." "We go again when they tell us. But not like before. You keep your men low. You don't let them bunch. You find gaps. If there aren't gaps, you don't push into the belts." Hayes nods. It is the kind of order that should have existed on July 1st. It exists now because July 1st happened. The Somme will grind on for months, eating villages yard by yard. New weapons will arrive. New methods will be tried. Tanks, creeping barrages refined, platoon tactics sharpened. But in this moment, July 2nd, under dull morning light, the first lesson of the offensive is already written across the field. Artillery did not guarantee wire would fall. Wire guaranteed men would. Section 7. The offensive marches on under the shadow of wire. July 3rd, 1916. The third morning. There is a thin rain before dawn. The kind that barely wets your skin, but turns chalk into paste. It clings to helmets and rifle stocks. It makes the air smell new for a moment, as if the land is trying to forget what happened on it. But the Somme does not forget. You can't walk 10 yards in the communication trenches without stepping over torn kit, smashed rifles, cartridges spilled like seeds. The battlefield is still talking, and every sentence begins with the wire. British artillery starts earlier now and in shorter, angrier bursts. Batteries that spent 7 days firing by calendar have been retuned by disaster into something closer to purpose. The gunners aim not just at trenches, but at specific lines of obstacle, the black combs in front of German positions. Observers in aircraft tilt into the morning light, sketching new photos of the belts. Ground officers, once content to trust the thunder, are crawling forward at night with patrols to look at the wire themselves. If it's there, they want to see it with their own eyes. At platoon level, Hayes feels the offensive changing shape around him. The new orders that reach his company are smaller, sharper. No more grand clean waves with a brushstroke timetable. Now it's, take that trench line, clear that strong point, push to that hedge, find the gaps. The men absorb the change as if it is a different kind of weather. Before first light, Hayes walks along what is left of his company. 2 ragged platoons, faces smeared with chalk and fatigue so deeply they look carved. New replacements have joined them. Fresh eyes that don't yet know what wire can do. The veterans don't tell them everything. They don't need to. The field in front tells it on their behalf. Hayes kneels beside a young private, barely 18, who is checking his bayonet latch with a trembling thumb. "You keep close to me," Hayes says quietly. "When we move, you watch the ground. Don't stand up unless I do. And if you see wire, you don't run into it. You go along it." The private swallows. "Yes, sir." A few hours later, they go out again. Not into the same killing geometry, but into its aftershock. Engineers have blown 2 narrow lanes through wire with Bangalore torpedoes during the night. Hayes watches the gaps through his periscope. They are real. They are ugly, ripped open. But they are there. The barrage begins, and this time it is closer. You can feel the concussions thump in your ribs. The shells burst low with instantaneous fuses that slap wire and parapet together in sharp flashes. There are still duds. There will always be duds. But now the gunners are trying to cut, not just crater. When the whistle blows, Hayes's men climb up and go forward in short rushes, not in parade lines. They keep low, leaning into the slope as if swimming into a tide. Hayes doesn't have to shout as much. The men remember what shouting cost. They reach the first gap. The wire here is shredded, its coils flung aside like broken ribs. A few bodies still hang in it from July 1st. The sight flinches through the men. Some look away, some don't. They step through. On the German side, machine guns open again. But their fire is no longer harvesting a wall of men stalled against belts. It's snapping at smaller targets, in smaller groups. The change is not a miracle. British casualties are still heavy, still constant. But the shape of death is different. It is not a slaughter in place. It is a battle advancing by inches. Hayes feels that difference in his bones. He sees one of his corporals reach a shell hole, toss a Mills bomb, then dart forward again. He sees men using craters as stepping stones, not coffins. He sees a German firing bay go silent under a short blast. They take a shallow German trench segment by late morning. A few dozen yards of chalk wall that smells of stale coffee, sweat, and earth. There are German dead in the firing step, and a wounded German boy no older than the Private Hayes just coached. The boy stares at them with stunned eyes that don't match the war around him. A sergeant waves Hayes over. "Sir, we're in." But the next belt's ahead, still thick. Hayes climbs to a periscope slit and looks. He sees it instantly. Another wire belt, still standing in some places, sagging in others. Not flattened enough to sprint through, not open enough to pretend. A week ago, that sight would have meant nothing to the plan. The timetable would have dragged them into it anyway. Today, it means a decision. Hayes ducks back down. "Hold here," he orders. "We don't push into that until it's cut. Send to company. Tell them we need wire fire and engineers." The sergeant nods, as if the request is obvious. Because now it is. Across the front, this is happening everywhere in miniature. Units that survived July 1st are learning a new literacy, the language of obstacles. They are reading the ground first, then reading the orders. Sometimes the orders are rewritten by the ground without anyone asking permission. By evening of July 3rd, the British line has inched forward in some northern sectors, more in the south. The cost is still brutal, but the battle is no longer a clean execution of a mistaken script. It's a brutal, adaptive grind. The grand dream of walking into a shattered German line died on the wire on July 1st. What replaces it is something harder and uglier. Learning under fire. That night, Hayes sits in a captured German dugout with his remaining officers. The dugout's timber ceiling is charred from shell impacts, but it held. A candle burns on an ammo box, throwing a weak circle of light. One officer, a captain with a bandaged head, finally says what no one has wanted to say since the bombardment ended. "We thought the guns would do it all." Hayes watches the candle flame twitch. "Yes," he says, "we did." The captain nods slowly, ashamed and furious and exhausted all at once. "And the wire," Hayes finishes for him, "told us we were wrong." Silence settles. Above them, far away, another barrage starts. Not the endless blind thunder of June 24th, but the tighter, meaner fire of a battle that has learned its first lesson on the hard way. Outside, in the dark between lines, the wire belts still glint faintly when flares rise. They are no longer just metal to be cut. They are memory turned physical. A reminder to every British officer on the Somme that plans are only as true as the ground allows them to be. The men will go on. The Somme will go on. It will swallow the summer and much of the autumn before it stops. But the first day's shock will never leave the officers who watch the barrage lift, watch their men walk forward, and then watch the wire remain. Alive, black, unbroken, when it was supposed to be gone. The Somme was a military defeat, but a turning point in how mankind fought.